Oh, maybe it's under more. Okay.
But what if when I go, okay.
Well, it might be on more, hopefully. Okay. Well, anyway.
We're being recorded. Okay. So, Greg, you sent us the ACRO final documents. Were there any significant changes to them?
Just incorporating John's feedback about having districts consider which students might participate and whether or not they would end up in a class with the faculty that was selected for the position, and some of the tensions or issues that might come up with that. And then Martha Garcia from Imperial Valley College has been telling us about her process for having students send in on the second level interviews with her. And so we added a section making that recommendation that CEOs should consider whether or not it'd be appropriate for them to have a student sit in, and then what that might look like formally, asking questions of a candidate, or just sitting and listening and then giving them input after the candidates are gone. So those were the only two significant changes from the last time you saw it. There was a little bit of language cleanup. I got some good feedback about some of the terms and how those are understood within the system, but doesn't change anything substantively.
All right. Now, when you say second level, do you mean final level?
Right.
Okay. All right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, and then David, you sent us the CIO final document. Were there any significant changes to yours?
The only significant change was I added a section there just as part of support for the initiative that laid out some of the statewide statistics on the diversity of the different employee groups.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Which highlighted the need for this kind of work.
Yeah, okay, great. And then everyone saw the memo from Vicki regarding the policy and procedures.
And she's on now, so.
Vicki, you want to speak to that? Vicki?
She might, no, she's not muted.
I see you, we see you, but we don't hear you.
Someone posted that Zoom meetings are like modern day seances. Like, wait, are you there? I hear you, I hear you.
Well, let me just quickly.
When she was trying to get on, the camera was moving like all over the place. So maybe she's just getting set up. So at some point, she'll probably let us know that she's ready to go. So we can go back to that.
Okay.
So number 5 is.
Report from us.
Yes.
Okay, so we had our screening, our
DEI steering committee meeting.
Steering committee meeting on Monday. Sue and I both attended, and we reported out. And they asked us, well, what do we want? Because there's money. What do we want next? And what we said was, all of your groups have done such a fantastic job that what we would like is a facilitator to take all of the documents you have prepared, put them together into one document, pulling out all the things that were in common, and then also listing those things that weren't in common. Then for the steering committee, which would include at that point representatives from all the constituency groups, which would basically be all of you folks, I think, to join the steering committee. We would stop meeting at that point, because after this meeting, we're kind of done with what we've done until we hear back from the steering committee. But if we can get a facilitator to do that, but to pull all of our documents together and to come up with a final document that then can go back out to all the constituency groups. You guys could get feedback, bring it back to the steering committee, and then we would discuss as a steering committee, okay, what should this final thing look like, and what should go into our toolkit? And at that point, we can move to start deploying and implementing it, was our thought. So we had asked the steering committee to have all of you join the steering committee, and our committee would at that point cease until further notice. So you wouldn't have a bunch of meetings to go to, but just the once a month steering committee meetings. And was there anything else, Sue?
Deb, can I ask,
I
can I
like
ask a
less meetings.
clarifying question on that?
Sure.
Deb? So the trustees have a number of work groups and this is one of them, correct?
Correct.
So is the idea that, I don't know if there's like CIO reps on the other trustee groups or HR reps on the other
No,
groups?
it's
Is the
funny.
idea that the
It's
steering committee would have one CIO, one HR? Okay.
And as far as I know, none of the other committees have asked the constituency groups to join them. So we're the
Well, other than Greg, I think Greg has attended a couple of them.
okay.
And one of the things that was noted was, I think it was you, David, is that the CIOs had different members for
Yes.
different areas.
Yeah.
So because I noted that and thought that you folks may have another, someone else that might do this, because the DEI steering committee is looking at the whole overarching
Right.
project,
Yep.
whereas we are focused on the hiring and search committees. So if there was someone else that's more appropriate, but I think what they do want is to have the input from you folks, whether it's you specifically or someone else.
Okay. I mean, I'm happy to do it. If I'm asked, I'm in contact with the other work groups, so I know what they're working on. And then we also have Jennifer Taylor Mendoza from Skyline is our representative at the Chancellor's office for the whole initiative.
Okay. Anyway, so that was what was discussed at the steering committee. Because there is such fine work that all of your groups have done, we want to incorporate them into the final document.
Well, one of the comments yesterday, well, it was either yesterday or Monday, which who knows? I can't remember these days. So many meetings, but they did compliment our group because we have reached out to all of you and worked together. And there was one group, and I'm not sure which one it was, maybe three, but where they said that they were no near accomplishing anything. There was so many things that so they actually need to have more help from the Chancellor's office. But my feeling has been, and I discussed this with Debbie, is that our group, because we had all of you participate so actively and had the input and exchange of ideas and thoughts, that there's so many things that it's almost too perfect. And I think what it is that the other groups need to have that input as well, which is why the discussion of having you folks participate in the steering committee at this point in time, as we're trying to figure out, because we're doing this work individually, but at some point it has to all come together. And so that's kind of where we're at. And if you are willing to participate, or you have someone else in mind that might be a better, someone else other than yourself, but we'd like to be able to report back that you'd be willing to participate in the steering committee meetings.
Speaking on behalf of ACRO, absolutely. Love the idea. Really appreciate the opportunity. I
know that hearing from you every week and hearing from the trustees, hearing from Greg and John and Kenesha, and from our student representatives, which also I found to be very, very helpful. And I'm embarrassed that we didn't invite a student to our own group in the CIO area. But hearing that and getting reinforced the ideas gave me more confidence as I went back to my own group to know that we were moving on the right track. So I did appreciate the collaboration.
Good.
And I think that
Can I comment? Can I make
Sure,
a comment?
sweet.
Yeah, so I just want to say that the reason a lot of our work groups didn't, we always invited others to come in and speak. We'd never thought of saying, okay, you're part of our group, because we thought, oh my gosh, that would be so time consuming. And that's one of the reasons we started the DEI dialogue, so we could invite the experts so everyone could come in and hear them. But yeah, I think this is the reason work group 1 has made so much progress. So I want to thank all of you who are not trustees who came in and did this, because obviously, you know, it helped move this work group along much more quickly than other work groups. But yeah, and as Sue and Debbie have said, so the discussion that happened at the steering committee is that most of our work groups are now kind of ready. We do think there needs to be facilitation though on the discussion for the with the trustees on how we
Everything okay?
we as trustees can kind of move things along and have these discussions at our own board.
Good news.
But it is
Yep.
also, we think around January will be the
When is-
time for us to bring stakeholders to the table. And so we sit and we write the toolkits together. So as I went through ACRO's, your presentation, Greg, you've done a lot. And I've gone through the CIOs. Well, I haven't gone through the CIOs yet, but I went through ACRO, I went through Academic Senate. We're all kind of saying the same thing. And I think that we're going to find there's a lot of common things that we're going to put into our toolkits, but each of us will have different roles. So I think that's the thought. And so I want to kudos to you all that you're stepping up and that you want to be at the table, because I think that's what we're also going to say at the DEI statewide committee too, is this is the time for us to start intersecting. So John Stanskas, I know you're on the call, and you know that I reached out to Dolores to also ask for any assistance, because you guys have been working on this for 3 years, I think. So you've had a lot of, obviously your document is really just so excellent. It's been a great model. And so we had hoped that we could work with Academic Senate to find a resource to help us put together these toolkits. So any assistance you can give us, I think would be helpful.
And I think we can do that. I just wanted to say that when we were creating the model hiring processes, we did invite trustees and ACRO and many other organizations to help sort of figure out what a collaborative approach really seems to work. And so I'm really excited that this is the recommendation to move all of us together now that we've had a semester to sort of work independently on this. Putting a toolkit together, I think we're hoping that the hiring process one will simply be additive, right? That we published it even though we knew it wasn't finished, just as a model for other groups, but also for local colleges to take a look at, hoping that as we got feedback from ACRO and from the CIOs and from the trustees, we could add to it. But I think we're talking about bigger than just the hiring part, and that would require creating more toolkits, and we could, I think we could contribute to that. So thanks for including
John,
it.
And not that you would have to come up. I think we're coming, what the trustee work groups are doing is we're all putting our questions and our data points into these toolkits. It's just a matter of, you know, how would you pull together these toolkits? Just because it's kind of an exercise that trustees generally don't have that skill in. And I think you all coming from faculty and the operations group do. So just any guidance. And then we also think that probably the chancellor's office will be open to giving all of us some resources to kind of pull this together. And they also see that as one of the things. So just let me put this out for everyone. So one of the things that trustees, we are looking at why we're seeing difficulty, and we also hear from you all, like even Academic Senate, even though you've got this great document out and ACRO has this great document out, we're also hearing that how do you push this out through the system? How do you get everyone kind of on that same level so that we can move forward? And so we think that what will be good is that we all do this together. So kind of what we're doing at the state level is what I'm doing at my own district, is I'm asking experts to come in and do kind of a presentation on where you are on DEI. So I'm going to ask our academic senate, you know, how have you embraced what the state is doing, and how are you looking at this? And so what that says is, even though, so we trustees can see that it's hard for us to get this out even through our board, and that's what we need help on, but we want to help you all as our partners, stakeholders in this. we want to help the academic senate. As you've gotten your document out, we want to make sure that our academic senate embraces those same thoughts and initiatives, and that they're talking about how they will bring this out through our system. And we want to do the same thing for ACRO, the CIO. So I think that this is where we start to intersect and we can partner on this.
I think what was interesting is that some of the questions that were in the chat, it's because those folks had not seen, we haven't seen each other's work. So there's sort of like, oh, well, did you think about this or did you do this? And it's like, yes, yes, yes. And I think it was on Monday when someone asked about hiring committees. And I wasn't trying to be catty, but I said, well, if you see the ACRO and you see the CIO plan and the academic centers, they all have these. It's just we need to get it all together because some people we're not going to be able to read everyone's report in that kind of detail. So Linda, as Debbie had said, we had requested to have a facilitator to take all of these documents that are here and sort of maybe, I don't know if it's possible, but at least to show the things that are common, and then maybe things that are going to be unique to that particular constituency group. So that's where I think we need some help.
Yeah, I think so too, Sue. One of the things I had recommended at the steering committee is we need to bring the leads together, and then we need to start looking at each other's documents, because it would be good if we had similar kinds of things. It doesn't have to be the exact things, right. But if we're asking questions in work group 1, then work group 2 should also be asking some questions and have that in their toolkit. Same with work group 3 and 4. So there has to be enough commonality in what we're putting out in our work product for us to kind of bring someone in to help pull it together. If we're so disparate, then I think it'll be more difficult, but these are things that we can talk about more.
Right, okay. So I think we have a consensus that you folks will participate in the monthly DEI steering committee meetings so we can have your input, and whether it's you or someone else, and you can let us know who the designee is. Unless we hear otherwise, we'd love to, continue to work with everyone here in this group. And I think the next item that we were going to talk about is what Linda had posed some questions. And Linda, Debbie and I spoke about this, and this seems to be where we would go once we have this toolkit, these best practices that we're going to push out to the districts. Then it's what happens there, what's the follow through. And we weren't quite sure that was the charge for our group, but maybe these are more overarching questions that we can, well, for example, Debbie, why don't you talk about the 5-year review of policies and procedures?
Yeah, we put at a minimum 5 years, because I don't know about your district, but we have some 250 policies in our district, and it takes 5 years to get through all of them when you look at so many a year. But what we would do is use some of the other things you put out there, Linda, as far as accountability, looking at the data. And if the data shows we're not moving the dime on DEI issues, then at that point, you may want to look at your policies in that area to revise them to help push that needle a little bit more. So many of the items, and we're thinking B through G, are really data elements and that need to be looked at and probably kicked over to our 1A group that's looking at data points to figure out, okay, these are data elements and outcomes that should be part of the toolkit that we need to look at. And based on those data points, at that point, we may look at changing the policies. The other thing is, Vicki and Jane Wright were looking at the policies and procedures, and what they came up with is both Eileen O'Hara and Laura and Jane began to wonder if it was more prudent for CCLC and the lawyers and the HR experts to take on the task of coming up with proposed policies that need to be changed I don't know, Vicky can you speak now?
Sure can.
Oh, go ahead.
Um, Jane and I, well, the timing was perfect. We were asked to look at the policies that fall under our work group. And so of course, the CCLC then has the session on policies, and Laura and Eileen presented, and both Jane and I were at the presentation. And it was an eye opener. The types of things, the laws that you had to know, the type of work that went into it. And so I in an email sent that, and we can put the link to the policies that they're working on in our Google Docs. And what we need to know, though, is it's a work in progress. They are going to probably continue to work on these through the spring. But one of the things that we came away with is that perhaps some of the things that we are talking about are actually more about best practices, protocols, those kinds of things. And then that we felt that we could possibly address and put in the toolkit. And so that's where we are now. But as far as our the policies are concerned, we really felt that the Arto and our lawyers were best to work on those, that CCLC would probably take those over and then do what they do as far as our policy updates. When they're ready, send them out to the districts. And so that's my little update. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so I think that what Vicky, what you're articulating is what at least I, as one of the steering committee members, thought would happen. So I think, and so this is what I mean when I say that, you know, for us to get facilitation, I think the work groups need to come together so that we have at least some common elements. So, you know, we all have some data points that we think need to be investigated. We all have some, we haven't identified that. We have some questions we think trustees need to be